Welcome to the Buzz and Reality Show, the number one Liberty pod in Detroit. I am Shaun Collins, the guy with a lot to say, and I'm here with my repeat guest, Mr. Mike Decentralized. How you doing, brother?
Fantastic, brother. Good to see you again.
It's always good to have you. There's always topics that, or there's always a time where there's topics where I want to talk to you more than anybody about. This
I
happens
appreciate
to
that.
be one of them. But before we go any further, we got to pay some bills up in this mother effer. We got
Yes.
bills to pay. And,
Yes.
you know, let's just bring it out there. Township Liberation. Thank you so much for your sponsor. You happen to be Township Liberation.
Yes, it's true. Uh, I am sponsoring by way of Township Liberation the Buds in Reality podcast because it's phenomenal and it's the most informative while also being least pretentious at the same time of any libertarian podcast I've yet seen or I think ever will see. So more power to you, sir. Keep
And
going.
I definitely appreciate that because I always try to keep it 100, no matter if it's even against my own quote unquote political party. Like I call shit when I see the shit. Somebody has to do it. Somebody has to just be like, hey, this isn't right. No
Yeah.
matter what it may be, whether it's right, left, in the middle, libertarian, Green Party, Tea Party, constitutionalist, I don't care. We have to call out the nonsense. But because you're sponsoring the show, we first must dig up this book right here.
Yes.
Revival of Common Sense. It's not just a clever name. It really isn't. This is a book about bringing back some common sense ideas into your local communities.
Yes.
You guys, you can find this on Amazon, by the way. You can read it in an afternoon. I did. I read it within a few hours, and I'm not the best reader in the entire world. I'll just put it like that. But no, you guys, like this book showcases not only what you can do locally, but how you can do it, which is one thing that, a lot of politicians kind of don't do. They say, hey, we have this idea to do this, that, or the other. Where's the plan?
Right.
You get the idea and the plan in this book with what, 78 pages, I believe?
I made it 76 on purpose. 76 pages.
76 pages,
And it
1776.
exactly, and it came out on July 4th, also on purpose. So yeah, 76 pages. And yeah, the idea is, uh, our local governing bodies can be used to nullify the unjust governance of larger governing bodies. That's the essence of what I think Thomas Paine's work can bring to the table today, and what we need to start doing because as you know, in this election cycle has been particularly toxic, and it's probably only going to get worse and worse. Everyone presents this notion that they have, every politician has this, presents this notion that they have the plan for your life. And this has been a big thing in presidential politics this election cycle. Oh, oh, so and so doesn't have a plan for you. Oh, I have a plan. No, I have a plan. So I don't want these people to have plans for our lives. They're not supposed to have plans for our lives. Thomas Paine is turning around in his grave thinking that politicians in the United States of America, a country he helped create as a rebellious Englishman that he was, he helped create the United States of America so that there were no plans of anyone other than your own self. The citizen has their own plans for their own lives, and there is no governing body that can dictate a plan for the subjects. That is what common sense literally unravels that whole concept that we're meant to be subjects to a higher authority other than God. And that's, it's a beautiful, beautiful work that hasn't been long forgotten, and we need to revive it because that's the only way forward I think we have for liberty in a practical sense. Don't get me wrong; I appreciate the messaging of higher office candidates. I do think that needs to continue. As libertarians, I'm not saying, hey, don't run for higher office, but know that what your role is messenger, and as an uplifter of smaller ticket people that actually have a chance to affect their town council, to affect even maybe their county level. There are some exceptions, which I think Michael White's going to kill it in Arkansas. I think that's going to be an amazing upset. Lord, hear my prayer. But that's that's an exception, I think, for the most part. Yeah, it's the local offices where we need to be focusing our attention in the immediate future and in the aftermath of November 5th.
Absolutely, absolutely. But not only do you have this book, which you can get on Amazon, please get this book on
It is good.
Amazon.
You won't regret it.
Like you won't regret it. You won't get a signed copy like I did, but
True.
Whatever. I had to
Well,
throw that in there.
hit me up. I mean, I may be able to work something out, right?
But no,
You can find me on X.
but not only do you have this book, you also do I want to call them seminars, but you do them on X Spaces.
Workshops, yeah.
Workshops, yes. You do workshops on how to liberate your local town, your local village, your local county, whatever it may be. It's all about decentralization and nullification. You can find Township Liberation on X Spaces, noon Pacific on Tuesdays,
That's right.
which would be 3 p.m. Eastern.
Eastern.
I can't give you all the in between times. You figure out your
That's
own times from there.
Yeah, that's actually 8 p.m. in the UK, and a lot of my British friends chime in, as well as a couple of my Nigerian friends who are attempting their own versions of township liberation in their respective countries. I even have my buddy Mark who pops in as well from New Zealand, where there's a lot of potential to make a lot of positive change for liberty very quickly in a relatively small country of only 5 million people. So yeah, there's a lot of international insight that goes into the Tuesday spaces. On Thursdays now, I'm going to be hooking up with another friend of ours, Free Patriot Artist, who is doing basically he's dedicating his podcast, which is called Freedom Uncut, and he's going to dedicate his Thursday evening Freedom Uncut to Township Liberation, and we're going to do a whole thing about that on a podcast format, simply because live podcasts at that time frame is better than X Spaces. X Spaces has proven to me to be very wonky and buggy in the evening time in North American time. So I was doing it at 4 p.m. Pacific on Thursdays on an X Space format, a similar workshop to what I do on Tuesdays, but at 4 p.m. And I just found so many problems with it. So I'm switching to a podcast format for Thursdays, and it's 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, and too darn late for my friends in the UK and Nigeria, but it's more for North American folks on Thursday.
Now, and just to throw something in there, and it's going to be a surprise to you as well. I hope you're up for the task.
All
I'm
right.
putting you on the spot, by the way.
That's okay.
We're going to do a show once a month on Buds and Reality, directly targeted towards township liberation.
Oh, absolutely.
We will not only have you on, we will have our friends from the UK on, probably some friends from Australia, New Zealand, anywhere else.
Yes.
It'll be more of a roundtable platform.
Beautiful.
I will also be coming into more live shows very soon.
Excellent.
I finally feel like I can wrap my head around some live shows and also keep my feelings together for some live shows, because there was a reason why I didn't do live shows. And one of the reasons was I'm a very passionate dude, and sometimes I say things I shouldn't. I think I've gotten past that. And if I don't, well, knock, 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 feds at the door. We'll have a good time.
No. Well, once again, be thankful we're not in the UK, right? Because they will knock at your door. Right, right. They've been knocking on people's doors, and what a travesty it is to be fulfilling the prophecies of one of your best writers who warned of this very thing, George Orwell, and they're walking right. They walked right into an Orwell story. Unbelievable that what's happening there. So there is a reason why I have an international focus, and that's because I think we're all facing the same enemy. I think what's more is the enemies of liberty, those that are going to crush our individual liberty, are working together internationally against us. And we need to do the same. Need to work internationally against them. And I don't see any reason why we can't do that, especially when we talk about township liberation. That's a common law concept, right? Nullification is a common law concept. So all countries with a common law history essentially have access to the same tradition, right? And it should be practicing that same tradition. Common law is really just an interpretation of an earthly interpretation of God's law. It's like saying that there's a higher purpose to your existence as an individual. It's a beautiful thing that's long forgotten, and I think long intentionally forgotten, like buried. And all of our common law countries, and this includes all the countries we just name dropped here. Obviously, the Five Eyes, Australia, New Zealand, UK, Canada. We haven't mentioned them, but those guys have their issues. I mean, I think Alberta should secede personally from the rest of Canada. But but also our friends in Western Africa. Those are all common law countries. Nigeria is a part of the Commonwealth. Cameroon is part of the British Commonwealth, right? So there's potential for a real movement of nullification to take root just about anywhere. We have to be more careful in more dangerous countries, but there's the potential for nullifying unjust governance in all of these countries, and there never was a time when we need to do that more and to work together. I think more. I'm absolutely convinced that we should be doing exactly what our enemies are doing to us and working together internationally against them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you can find out more on X at Town Liberation, at Town Liberation, at Town Liberation. I'm
there it is.
Saying it. Just get it in there. It's Township Liberation, but because of at handles, there probably was something like that already. So
I no, actually, I had to shorten it. It was too long.
Oh, okay. It was too long. So find Mike at Town Liberation or Two Free Mike.
There it is.
Two Free Mike. This is the new sponsor. This is my guy. I love you very much. Thank you so much.
Likewise, brother.
Yes. You're literally doing the Lord's work, and you're doing it globally. Now let's get into the show, man. Let's just bring it in real hot. Let's come in and just go. So I had a big plan about this show. I did. I had a plan for, like, it's going to be this big, like, we're coming up on the election. We're going to just rage and bash and do this and do that. We're probably going to bash
a little here and there, right?
But we're, I feel like we need to take a little bit of a different direction. God spoke to me today and said, hey, you don't need to be your normal self today on this one. We need to bring awareness and we need to bring solutions. Yes. So this is what we're going to do today. That's what we're going to do on the show. The original rage case plan. Hey, if I have a rant, great. If I don't, great. If you have a rant, I hope you do. If you don't, but we need to really point out some things that are happening within our country right now, coming up to voting season, because next week's show's already recorded, guys. It's not going to it's not going to be political at all, by the way. It's actually
that's right.
Yeah.
That's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be.
I know what it is. I'm a sponsor now, but but we'll keep it secret. You got to keep that down.
Awesome. So we're going to do this time, and I probably will go live on election night with multiple people. There'll be many invites. We're going to talk about it. We're going to get into it. But for now, let's go.
Yes.
So first things first. Obviously, this country is a disaster.
Yes.
Obviously, promises are being made from both sides.
Right.
Obviously, promises will not be kept from both sides because it's impossible to keep those promises. So let's start here. Let's start with the Republican Party. Because, well, as much as I loathe the Democrats, at least the Democrats tell you exactly who they are and what they're doing.
That's right.
And the Republicans are going to lie to you and tell you that they care about your constitutional rights and
they're for small government,
and for smaller government, and for seriously, I'm glad you point that out. They're for smaller government. They want to take care of the border, right? They want to take care of the border. Well, I'm going to tell you something, guys. They're not going to take care of the border. They've had ample opportunity to take care of the border, actually. Not only have they had the House, the Senate, and the presidency on multiple different occasions and still not did anything with the border. On top of it, they're saying that they're going to do mass deportations to people who have come here illegally. Sorry, guys. Mass deportations are not happening. What are they going to do? Go knock on every door in the United States and be like, hey, are you harboring some fugitives from out of the country? No, they're not going to do that. So,
you're getting a picture of the Inglourious Bastards scene, right? Right. I just got a picture of that. Like, so do you have the illegal aliens in your, in your attic, or do you have them in the, I could just see the whole thing. That's not going to go down like that. You're absolutely right. Just like we'll have Mexico pay for it. None of that stuff is going to happen, right?
None of that stuff is happening. But also, during the Trump era, which he is the one who's saying we're going to have mass deportations and we're going to do all this and do all that. Dude, for half of Trump's presidency, they had control of the House, the Senate, and of the presidency. They could have dealt with the border handily without any fight, and they did nothing. And they didn't get the wall built either, by the way.
Right. Oh yeah. Kid, let's just keep going with your thought, because I know we both know why this is, what this phenomenon is, right? We both know they're not trying to solve problems, right? Because if politicians solved problems, we wouldn't need them anymore once the problems are solved. If they could solve these societal issues, their job is to perpetuate problems, not to solve them. Right. So of course there's no solution. There's a lot of, well, the Democrats, doggone it, they stopped us from doing that. How? When you have the control over, for 2 years, you have a control over every component of the federal government, and you still got stopped. How did that happen? No, it got stopped because you didn't want to have a decisive victory. That's why it got stopped. That's how mutual controlled opposition works. And I may be getting ahead of you, but there's a lot of that rhetoric going around where there's one side is pretending to be way more decisive than they would be to office, and vice versa, all pretending to be super decisive on the campaign trail. But when it comes right down to it, they have no incentive to actually solve these issues. They are incentivized to perpetuate these problems, perpetuate the issues, perpetuate, I dare say, the suffering, especially when it comes to exporting suffering by funding foreign conflicts. Great that we don't have U.S. military terribly actively involved, although they are, but at least not to the extent that they used to. But bottom line, that suffering is what they want. They want to perpetuate. They don't want to resolve it. They can't have a decisive victory, neither side. That's the whole nature of mutual controlled opposition, and why there really is only one party. I loved it when Elon Musk talks about how if Trump doesn't get in, then we're going to have a one party. What do we have now? We have a one party government now. We have a one party state. We are a one party state. We've been a one party state probably since November 22nd, 1963. We were a one party state. But the point being is, this is the rhetoric we're having to digest day in and day. We can't avoid it now because of where we are this close to the election, where it's being regurgitated all over us. We have to seriously stick our head in the sand like an ostrich to avoid this kind of nonsense rhetoric. Like, there's a huge difference between the two major parties, and there isn't. They're mutual controlled opposition.
There really isn't. And the fact of the matter is that the border has become their war cry, right?
Yes.
And also, not only is the border become their war cry, it's the Democrats are pedos war cry.
Yeah.
We're like, oh my God, these people were all at Epstein Island and blah, blah, blah. And we're, oh my God, how can you even vote for these people? And I'm like, well, hey man, hang on a second. How many pictures does Trump have with Jeffrey Epstein?
Right. I mean, come on.
How many pictures does Joe Biden have with Jeffrey Epstein? How many pictures does Kamala Harris have with Jeffrey Epstein?
Yeah, that's the wrong card to play.
That's the very wrong card to play. And not to mention, even God, we're going back to the very early days of Buds, a couple of years ago, that those shows aren't even relevant on social media or on platforms anymore, because when I got signed with the record label, I pulled that first year's shows down. I pulled them all down just because I was like, those might not need to be seen out in the real world if I ever get quote unquote popular. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, but now you're going to make me want to go back and watch some of those. I watched some of those,
Yeah.
like the Bud's basements, right?
Bud's in the basement.
Bud's in the basement.
Days, but they're gone. You can't get them. I have the masters.
Okay, then.
Masters still. They're still there. But let's just put it out there. The MAGA war cry was pedophilia, Epstein Island, Epstein Island,
child trafficking,
all this, that, or the other. Which is fucking terrible. It's obviously,
it is happening.
And people who are involved with that should die very slowly.
Yes.
Honestly, they should.
Anybody for each one.
Yeah, I don't care how they do it. I want it to be a very slow, painful process. That's what I want, because anything to do with children or animals, all bets are off for me.
Right.
But you get Trump a couple years ago, which got me in big trouble actually on one of the shows. The Queen of England died.
Right.
Well, the Queen of England's son is Prince Andrew. Prince Andrew got a bunch of trouble from the Epstein Island stuff.
You bet.
And actually had to pay Virginia Giuffre a bunch of money And there was anywhere from the reports between 12 million and 20 million dollars. I don't have the exact number, but it was somewhere in between there, between 12 and
Right.
20 million. Who paid for that?
Right.
It wasn't Andrew. He didn't have no money. So it was either Charles or Queen Elizabeth.
Yep.
And so when she died, Trump was like, "Oh my God, the Queen died," and blah blah. He's on Truth Social. I used to have a Truth account at one point. I still do. I don't know how to get into it anymore because whatever. And I never got any traction. Surprise, surprise.
Right.
But I think I had 16 followers at once. Time, big deal. But anyways, he's on there, just praising the Queen and this. They did all this and all that, and I'm like, hey guys, wait a minute here. The MAGA crowd should be really pissed off about this because you've been screaming about Prince Andrew for the last 2 years or whatever it was. And then he's out there praising the family. Who gave Andrew the money? You know, and we'll get to the Democrats in a minute. Like, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. We'll get
Yeah.
to
We're
the
not getting, they're
Democrats
not
in a
getting off
minute.
the hook either.
But
Yeah.
like, I'm pointing out into this is what I want to do for you guys is to open up a line of thinking and seeing the perspective and the bullshit that they're coming at you with, because what they're telling you and their actions are totally opposite.
Yes.
You know,
There's an inconsistency, and Trump is one of the most inconsistent people ever to enter politics, and he tries to use that as his strength sometimes, and sometimes it actually even works as a strength. But what you're talking about, and by the way, I think I need to say this: just because you have the last name of Collins doesn't mean you have any reason to have a huge amount of beef with Queen Elizabeth. You're just pointing out facts, right?
oh yeah,
Yeah,
oh
yeah,
yeah.
you're not using your Irish American bias against the Queen. You're
Well, I
actually
mean, I
just
have a problem with
stating facts.
England just being Irish
Of
in general. Don't get
of
me wrong,
course,
but
don't
like
get you wrong, but you're not
that
trying to.
that's
That's not
something
influencing
totally
this. Yeah,
opposite of this. Like,
yeah. This is about
yeah,
pedophilia and the impact of Prince Andrew in that world, and the fact that Trump essentially just gave a pass to an enabler. Am I right? That's essentially what
yes.
somebody had to enable Prince Andrew's uh, illicit behavior, which is probably the most sanitized way I could say it. And so you're right to point that out. Like this is a character issue. This is where this could have been an opportunity to say, look, God save the Queen and all, but you know her son was no good. And by the way, this is kind of creepy how he was able to keep stuff buried. Like obviously he had help.
He
And,
bought his way out of it. He
he
bought his
bought
way
his way out
out.
of it. Yeah,
Like, that
and,
was
and he
that.
bought his way out of it with. And let's go even deeper. There's nothing that the royal family has that wasn't provided by the British taxpayer, too. That's another wrinkle to this. And you and I have now have good great Liberty friends in the UK. I can guarantee you they are not pleased with if we break this down and they actually think about this one more thing they don't want their tax dollars spent on. So can you imagine? So I think you're making a good point, obviously.
And then there's also, within the Republican Party, they say, hey, we care about your First Amendment. We care about your Second Amendment. Um, we want smaller government. This is the Republican Party. Hey, we're
That's what
here
they
for
say.
smaller government.
Sure.
And I look at
Sure.
Republicans all the time, me being a former neoconservative Republican. I
That's
was
right.
a hardcore neocon dog, like two
Yeah, you told
Bush
me about that.
supporter, two-time, I supported the wars out there in the Middle East after 9/11, all that shit. And then I kind of had an awakening. I woke up. Not woke, you guys. I woke up. I saw
Right.
it was or whatever. But then, you look at these things, and a lot of Republicans would be like, well, Reagan was the greatest Republican. And I'm like, well, hey, Reagan cheated in the 19 election. He made a deal with Iran to hold those hostages a little longer so he could win the election over Carter. And they'll be like, what? What do you mean? And I'll be like, here's the receipts, dog. Here you go. Knock yourself out. Iran Contra, knock yourself out. But then you look at the other side, like, you know, when has the Republican Party ever shrunk the size of government?
Not ever. Oh well, okay. Not since Calvin, God bless him, Coolidge. Not since Coolidge, right? Coolidge did, right? He was the last president to ever shrink government. And even he didn't do it as well as he probably thought he could. And looking back, we could say he still made a couple pretty big mistakes, like basically allowing alcohol prohibition to continue, among other things. But that was the last small government, the last, and maybe the only, at least certainly in the last, 100 years or more, the only real small government Republican I can point to that was ever sat in the Oval Office. Humble opinion. I mean, to take it for what it's worth, but
Right.
Silent Cal was the goal, the last great president, in my opinion. Honestly, it was truly a good president. I can say, because even Kennedy, although I admire him because he took a bullet for us, essentially he literally sacrificed himself in a way that, yeah, I mean, it breaks my heart, because I think if he had been a little less brazen, he might have lived a little longer if he tried to play a longer game. But either way, even Kennedy had policies I didn't agree with, honestly. I still admire the guy for sacrificing his life to defend us from the intelligence agencies that were already by then way too powerful. But it's Coolidge was the last actual small government Republican. There hasn't been one since. A lot of them
You're
pretend
going way back. You're going way
yeah.
back.
That's the last. Has there ever been a Republican president that's been small government since Coolidge? No, no. They've all grown
No.
government tremendously. Right? I mean, so yeah. I mean, God bless them. They can talk about being small government. Really, what they're trying to say is we're a little less big than our mutual controlled opposition Democrats.
That's right. That's right.
That's the best they can say.
That Yeah, and that's barely. You know what I mean?
That's really,
That's totally
yeah,
barely. And
by a
they
thin margin.
and then these clowns will be like, "Hey, we care about your gun rights. We want you to have your guns." Or blah,
Oh,
blah. Well, if you look at every single red flag law that's gone through DC, the only reason it's passed, those red flag laws pass, is because so many Republicans jumped on board and signed that shit. So do you think they really care about your gun rights? No, they don't care at all, because they're the reasons literally that this shit gets passed every single time through the Congress or in Senate and all that nonsense. They are the reason. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
They'll care about it for marketing purposes only, right? It's like, and again, they're like, we're not. It's also a matter of we're not as bad as, right? It's like, well, it's like I only want to take some of your gun rights away. Those guys want to take even more gun rights away, dude. It's still, no matter what you want to slice it, you're still infringing on our right to use lethal force to protect ourselves, and that's that's not an improvement. And they sell themselves as if they are somehow better, when in reality they're just, they just turn the oven slightly lower, in temperature when it comes to burning up your rights, right? That's the only difference. And even then, they're not really that's at best case scenario. A lot of times, some of them are downright leading the charge for gun restrictions and so forth. So yeah, that's not their. Yeah, that's not a believable thing anymore, and it shouldn't be. People should be wise to the fact that the GOP is not a Second Amendment party, in spite of what many politicians will try to tell you. And of course, there are legitimate exceptions, but those are the ones that are usually liberty leaning. So I'm with you on that one too. They're not the champions of gun rights either.
Now, one last thing on the Republican Party before we switch the Marxist.
Right?
We're gonna go there, and we're gonna bring this all together too.
Yes.
But here we go. Republicans swear up and down they're pro-life. They claim to be pro-life. They don't kill the babies. Blah blah blah. Life begins at conceptions. All this stuff.
Unless Israel's doing it.
Exactly. But hey,
that jump ahead on you. Okay,
exactly.
yeah.
Thank you for saying that.
Unless Israel's doing it, then they can kill all the babies you want, especially
if
toddlers.
Israel's involved, you can bomb all the hospitals and children and schools you want.
Burn them alive.
And also, yes,
it's 1,000 Wacos in Gaza.
We want you to send your American children to the Middle East to die for Israel. Please make this make sense. Now I'm going to go off on a rant. Holy shit.
That's all right. But you know what? It needs to be done.
So these people who are pro-life, who say up and down, like, hey, we need to save the children, life, the non-aggression principle goes from the womb to the tomb, as some would say, which I do believe that in my own personal beliefs. I do believe the non-aggression principle starts at the womb and goes to the tomb. But because I carry a dick and balls between my legs, it's not really up to me, you know. But here's the facts of the matter: the Republicans want you to send your teenage children to go die for another country. For what? Because the Bible told you so? Because I'm going to tell you guys something about the Bible. I'm going to break it down for you real quick. I'm a Bible believing Christian. I love Jesus Christ more than I love anything on this entire planet.
Amen. Here we go.
Okay. Jesus comes first, always.
Hallelujah.
And Jesus wants you to love the Jewish people and support the Jewish people.
Absolutely. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Yeah,
absolutely. Pray for the peace of Israel and Jerusalem. Okay. Yes, of course. What he does not want you to support is murderous regimes. Thou shalt not kill is one of the 10 commandments.
Thank you.
And the IDF is out there killing tens of thousands of people. Now, whether it's a genocide or not, that's a huge argument within the Libertarian Party.
Right.
I'm going to stay out of that for now. But
well, I think we can agree on the word atrocity, right?
It is an atrocity.
I think we can agree on the word atrocity. I mean, and the other thing that I want to acknowledge, so we're clear, is there's no question that there is atrocities that are being committed against Israel as well, right? There is a mutual exchange of atrocity. This is a very nuanced topic, but let's just try to encapsulate it real quick. There's a mutual exchange of atrocity that's going on here. That the whole thing, if you look at it from a kind of a high level and just try to observe from this, it looks like one giant satanic ritual is what it looks like to me, because you got one side killing, raping, murdering, you got another side responding with even more burning people alive in hospitals, and the whole thing is a giant mutual exchange of atrocity that looks to me like one gigantic satanic ritual, and it's disgusting. It should be horrifying. The whole conflict should be horrifying, and yet since 1948, what else did we think we were going to get? Right? It's like, right. What else was going to? This is an engineered, perpetual warfare, mutual exchange of crisis situation. It's orchestrated to be exactly that, so that there's a constant exchange of atrocity every 2 to 3 years at various stages of escalation. Right now, it's highly escalated, but it's always supposed to be there. Since 1948, that's always going to be the case, because of the way it was gone about. We're talking about a secular state of Israel. Now, God loves everybody, man, right? God so loved the world that he gave his holy man. I said, you want to talk about the most, I'm going to preach for a minute, okay? The most inclusive act. You want to talk about equity and inclusion? The most inclusive act of all time was the cross of Jesus Christ. Amen. Right? It doesn't get any more inclusive than the whole world. Everybody that ever lived or ever will live is invited to participate in this salvation, because it was he did it whether you receive him or not. He did it anyway. So obviously, God cares about the Jewish people that are being slaughtered by these built-in enemies that they've now been placed in direct proximity to since 1948. But God also cares and loves the people that the IDF is slaughtering allegedly in response. There is not one life lost that God doesn't care about in that situation. There's not one atrocity being committed that doesn't disgust God. Right? This is a dark and, I believe, very satanic situation. This is well before you and I were born. And my prayers, when I pray for the peace of Jerusalem, is that Jesus intervenes, the Holy Spirit infiltrates this nonsense, this mutual exchange of atrocity, and somehow out of this extreme darkness, the light of Hamashiach, the Christ, comes and it changes the temperature miraculously, however it's going to be done. But that's how my prayers work on that situation, because one thing for sure, the forces at work want to perpetuate it. And we talk about the worst form of orchestrated conflict for decade after decade. And I pray for the peace of Jerusalem. But that also means that I pray for those that that the Israeli government wants to target. And let's go ahead and take it a quick step further. The Israeli government forced the vaccine on every single one of its citizens, the
Yes.
COVID-19 vaccines, forced them. There's a couple, and I'll point them out to you online that were managed to avoid it, who are basically like Israeli libertarians, basically I've been in touch with. They're like, oh no, we're not doing that. And they don't go along with the whole Netanyahu thing. They know that there's something inherently wrong about how their own country was formed and how it's always being put in the line of fire on purpose. Is October 7th not the first time that there's questionable lapse in defensive capabilities, and so there are freedom-loving people, there are liberty-loving Israelis, but they're the first that will tell you that their government is not to be trusted any more than we trust our own government in the United States, or than our British friends trust the government in Westminster, or Canadian friends trust Ottawa, or our Nigerian friends trust the Nigerian government. It's no one should be trusting their governments right now more than ever. No one, nowhere on this earth should be trusting their government. We all, if any of us, the ones who know better, this is our time to stick together and to find each other, to lift each other up in prayer and whatever other means possible. Lift each other up, because we are all facing a similar enemy in the form of our governments.
Yes.
Sermon over.
God, I love that, man. Wow, you gave me goosebumps, Doug. Thank you.
Sermon,
There, there, my arms
sermon ended.
right now, but you're 100% correct. Like, we need to separate ourselves from what these elite, powerful people are doing. Like, we are not them. It's not even close. Like, honestly, like, they're not like us. We're not like them. It's really pathetic, actually, to see people listen to people out in Hollywood or in the music industry go out
It's
and be
just
like,
it's just up the street, by the way.
yeah, you live out there.
That's
Wow.
50 miles up the road. Yeah, but yes, it is. There's obviously cultishness all over that too, right? And we're just scratching the surface of that too. I don't want to get distracted. There's plenty of that, all throughout. Because I've got friends in the business, right? Some of my fraternity brothers, in fact, they could tell you, like, yeah, there is definitely a dark underside, to Hollywood, and there is an overt manipulation by not just woke agenda and leftist politics, but the intelligence community is all over Hollywood. And I've had friends of mine, and I probably shouldn't mention this, but they said, "Oh yeah, there's no question that the intelligence community pulls a lot of string, not in entirety, but definitely pulls enough strings to be a institution in and of itself, a hidden one that pulls a lot of strings in Hollywood too, to present messages that are going to reinforce their agenda as an intelligence community." So, I mean, just think about some of the stuff that's come out. Civil War, really? Like, if that's not predictive programming, I don't know what is. Like, they so want us to get violent. They
They
really,
do. Oh,
right?
they're begging for it.
Let's spend a minute on
Begging
this,
for
because
it.
they so want us to get violent. Why I wrote Township Liberation with my silent co-author partner. What we're really all about using nullification, which is effectively nonviolent. Right now, it's not 100% because we will defend ourselves, but it's in that sense it's kind of Malcolm X, really. But the point is we use nullification, not armed resistance, because the last thing we want to do is play into their hands. We saw, and again, we're looking at other countries now. Look at what happened when there were anti-immigrant riots in the UK. They cracked down hard on people, and they got that legislation passed that had been in the works for many years to prohibit speech, what they call hate speech, which is really just hurty words, all because some people rightfully got pissed off that a bunch of little English girls were stabbed to death by a knife wielding lunatic, a knife wielding lunatic immigrant in their country, right? So there were there were riots. You bet there was a less than peaceful response, but boy, did their current Labor government just utilize that to their advantage. And that's the boy, we should learn from what happened on January 6th. We should learn from all of the traps that they want to lay for us, that we don't need to play into that, right? We're not going to, obviously we should keep all of our guns and all of our ammunition and stockpile as much as you can. Don't use it unless you absolutely have to, and instead focus on what you can do peacefully through your right as a citizen in a common law country to nullify unjust governance. I mean, we should be looking to the abolitionists as the example, right? I mean, not the people that wanted to fight a civil war. That was nonsense, right? The original civil war was avoided. It's just as avoidable as any future civil war, as far as I'm concerned. You could nullify the effects of slavery, perpetuate an underground railroad, and eventually crush the hell out of that horrific institution without needing to, engage in a violent, bloody, awful war of American against American. The same rule applies today. We don't need to have, it's a pit American against American, pointing guns at each other. It's not necessary. We just use the power of nullification the way northern states nullified the fugitive slave law. We're just doing that writ large across the country. And I know we can do that, not just from juries, but again, using local governing bodies to say no to larger governing bodies and to their oppressive ordinances and would-be laws and anything else that's coming out of the higher levels of government, whether in my case, Sacramento, or Washington, D.C., or in your case, Lansing, Washington, D.C., we can use our local governing bodies, with a little bit of well thought out strategy and a lot of prayer, use our local governing bodies to repel that kind of nonsense without having to point a gun at anybody or even come close to the kind of predictive programming that they're trying to shove down our throats, that, oh, you're going to be so angry, when so and so loses the election, right, if that happens, that you're going to want to take up arms and fight a war. No, we're not. No, we're not going to fall into that trap. And I know some diehard, Donald Trump supporters that would be infuriated and are convinced that it would be another stolen election if he doesn't win. But thankfully, they're 100% on board with the idea that doesn't mean we're going to stage some kind of violent, we're not going to respond with violence. We're going to do this. Doggone it. I've got them. I swear, Buds, I've got them. I've got them ready to take action peacefully through nullification. And we can do this. This is the path forward, no matter what happens after November 5th.
That's right. You're 100% correct. Now let's move on to the Democratic Party. And their nonsense, because we pointed out some Republican nonsense. Now we got to point out some Democrat nonsense.
Heaping with nonsense, yes.
Which is wow. Now their war cry right now is infanticide. It's the
right. That's all they got.
It's the single issue that they can wrap up a lot of people behind and get them gung ho about
it. And
okay?
I hate to say it's working because people are terrified of being responsible for one thing. I mean, I get it. It's a messed up world, and people, it's working. But yes, the two things they seem to have. You tell me if I'm wrong. They have abortion and not being Donald Trump. Those are their two selling points.
That's the only thing they have.
They're the only things they have.
But the fact of the matter is you have this woman on TV, Kamala Harris, and most of her commercials about her getting real like passionate and saying the government shouldn't be telling people what to do with their bodies or what
I know, right?
Bodies. And I'm like, hold the fucking phone for a minute. Y'all need to hang on a second, because 4 years ago you were telling everybody, including women, that they needed to take this experimental shot or they couldn't go out in public, go to work, go do anything that was normal, flying a plane or anything. This is what they did. And the Democrats would be like, no, we didn't do that. Bull fucking shit.
I know. We have the receipts.
Literally put a mandate on businesses who had more than 100 employees that they were either going to A, take the shot, or B, get a test once a week.
Which honestly,
tell me where that's bodily autonomy. Tell me how that's not telling somebody else what they're going to do with their own body. This includes women. These are women in the workforce that they're doing it. And now they're saying nobody should be telling women what to do with their body? The fuck out of here.
I know. The hypocrisy has reached, new heights that I never thought possible. And I can imagine quite a bit, right? But this is a whole new level of hypocrisy. And they expect it to be memory hold. And you know what? This is why it kind of works, because again, people are so terrified that something's going to be taken away from them, right? And they're so terrified. Oh my! What if I no longer have that? I'm an irresponsible, dumb college kid. No offense to college kids, but right. But what am I supposed to do if, I'm so scared? I'll go ahead and I will see. Fear is a big motivator, right? So I'm afraid I'll actually have to be responsible when I know I'm an irresponsible screw up, which is also by design, by the way, culturally. But then this whole thing outweighs what happened even just a few years ago. Even just a few years ago, when they're high school, I'm talking about hypothetical college girl and guy these days,
Which
right?
schools
Just years
mandated
ago.
women
Yes,
to get shots.
that's right.
They mandated
Oh, I know
women
it.
to get shots. So don't tell me you care about women's lives or bodies.
No, it's so sad, but they're memory holding that. It's a selective kind of memory hole, right? Because it's like, okay, we're going to make you so afraid of something that it'll cause you to help maybe forgive and forget, what we did over here just a few years ago when we shut down your high school. You couldn't go to school in person. When we shut, like when we said, oh, you better get the vaccine if you want to go to school in person anymore, right? All that kind of stuff. It gets kind of put aside because of, oh my gosh, I may not, what if Project 2025, I may not be able to ever get abortion again ever, in this whole country. That's the kind of effective fear tactic that they're using, but it is nonsense, right? There's no way that can fly, right?
Let's talk about Project 2025 since you brought it up, because
Yes.
they're literally saying, these Democrats are literally saying that this is a Trump agenda, and it is not. His name is nowhere near it. He didn't sign it.
No.
He has nothing to do with it. This was the Heritage Foundation. This is literally QAnon 2020 going to Blue Anon 2024. Seriously, because this nonsense with 2025, dude, Republicans aren't trying to fucking monitor women's pregnancies. They're not trying to do that at all. They have better things to try than even deal with that. They do not. Trump didn't come up with this. I don't know how many times, and I hate that I'm sticking up for the guy right now.
I know it. I know, but let's do it. Just do it because
you have to. You have to be truthful and honest.
Right.
Dude, the guy's name's on it. He's denounced it. Like, I don't even know, like, how many more times
so
do you have to say, hey, I have nothing to do with this, and I'm not going to cater to it. But he doesn't help himself. Then when he's on live TV in a debate, they say, well, denounce it. And he won't denounce it. Okay. So he doesn't help himself there.
No, but he shoots himself in the foot more times than, he's his own. Actually, she doesn't need. He really does shoot himself in the foot, like, habitually now. It's constant. It's constant. I'm like, why? But yes.
But the fact of the matter is that this Project 2025 has nothing to do with Donald Trump. This was a church foundation, the Heritage Foundation, that put this together and thought it was a great idea. That's it. That's where it ends. There's nothing more about it. Trump's not going to do this. Trump literally said, I'm not going to bat for the guy. I hate doing this shit, dude.
I know. But
he literally said, yo, if it comes to rape, incest, or the life of the mother, like, it is.
I'm not against it. Yeah. It's like,
it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? He's not saying
he caught some heat. Why you want to give him props is because he caught heat from the religious right that wants to legislate morality, through the government. He took some heat from those guys for saying that. And the other thing that he took heat for that was one of those things like, I wish this had come sooner, and I wish he would be more consistent. But he actually came out and said, yeah, go ahead and legalize marijuana. Let's make cannabis. Let's go ahead and make cannabis legal. I'm like, okay, that was, talk about too little too late. But you know what? He did at least, bring that up, right? So,
well, they're all pandering at this point.
They are, exactly.
That's very recent. That's a
very recent.
And they're between her and him, they're both going outside their actual ideals right now and saying, hey, maybe we're going to do this. They're just currying you right now. Just like they do with abortion and what they do with the border. They're currying votes right now. That's it.
He caught hell, at least. And again, this is the thing. He caught hell from certainly the DeSantis crew, right? Because that guy's all about keeping a plant illegal in Florida, which is another reason why he's a big freaking massive disappointment. Like, give me a break, this guy. So I again, you're right. It's all pandering. It's all part of the nonsense. But it's like, you at least spoke the words for what it's worth. So even though I don't believe you, right? It's like I can still say, well, at least that isn't. That's like a societal indicator, right? That maybe libertarian. Wrong, right? That we've been right since 1971, and now just finally, over 50 years later, the two mutual controlled opposition parties are actually, on board with what we've been saying for over 50 years. But the point is yeah, you can't be trusted. I hate defending either of these two camps, but when you have glaring hypocrisy on the Democrat side, particularly when it comes to bodily autonomy, glaring inconsistent, like it's like as inconsistent as Donald Trump is, and I can't think of anybody who's been more inconsistent in recent memory. All right, but boy, do they give him a run for his money when they start doing this talk about bodily autonomy on the political left, and that's not even talking about how again, not to get ahead of you, but let's also, you got to bring up the fact that the Democrat Party of 2024 is unrecognizable from the Democratic Party of even 2004, let alone 1984, 74, 65. That there's almost no similarity between there's a whole different Democratic Party during the Obama years and on. It is very, very right. It's terrifyingly different. I mean, first of all, I'll first acknowledge that the Democratic Party gave lip service to being anti-war, but the establishment never really was anti-war. And let's be honest. Okay, since they murdered JFK, they weren't never really that anti-war.
They killed him for a reason.
They killed him for a reason because he was actually anti-war, right? And he actually opposed the military-industrial complex and the intelligence agencies. LBJ, on the other hand, hey, you're my new best friends, military-industrial complex and intelligence agencies, and that was the Democratic standard bearer, right? From that point on. So it wasn't like they were genuinely anti-war, but at least the anti-war voice had a seat at the table of the Democrat Party, one way, shape, or form, right? They were considered the fringe. They were the Abby Hoffmans and the wackos and the peaceniks and all the people, like the hippies and everybody. They at least had somewhat of a seat, right, at the Democratic Party establishment. But boy, not anymore. Not since the Nobel Peace Prize winner started bombing hospitals and brown kids.
Obama.
Obama, right? I mean, right? Not since he started his term, where it then literally the paradigm shifted almost 180. Okay, the surveillance state that he pledged to stop and end, no, it's okay now because our guy's in charge. So it's okay. Well, let's have our surveillance state, right? Now, again, Democrats up until that time were anti-censorship, anti-surveillance state.
Yes.
They believed in questioning authority, right? I mean, and again, we can rag on RFK Jr. for his many faults, but my God, at least he represented, in my opinion anyway, the old school left that have been drummed out of the Democratic Party, right? I mean, to me, he represents that, and Nicole too.
He's a
right?
Kennedy Democrat.
He's a Kennedy Democrat,
surprise.
and right,
Surprise.
And though I would never support, I wouldn't vote for that, but oh my God, is it a breath of fresh air compared to what the Democrats are today? Like it's so much, because I could at least put it to just, timetable wise, back in the 90s when I was at my most active in the Libertarian Party until now, this was a group of people that I would work with. I would work with them on anti-war stuff, on anti-drug war stuff, on anti-surveillance state stuff, on anti-censorship stuff. I could always count on the local Democrats here in Orange County to help with those issues and to help push against ordinances and things that are being done locally in Orange County that were infringements of freedom of speech, that were infringements of a right to privacy, that were bolstering unnecessary drug restrictions and drug laws, and I mean, adding, like the district attorney used to be terrible. Well, they still kind of are. Oh, better be careful how I say that. But
they're coming to you.
They're coming to they know where I live, I'm sure. But the point is, back in it was really bad in the 90s, and it wasn't the Republican Party that was helping with that. It was the Democrat Party who was helping, joining with libertarians against oppressive drug laws and whatnot. So, and the Greens too, by the way, for that matter. The local Greens in the 90s were really helpful in that stuff, anti-war stuff. So it was the political left, the political far left, who helped me with those issues back in the day. Well, those folks got drummed out of the establishment Democrat Party. There's no question. By the time 2009 rolled around, they had no place. That's where the Green
Party. It was a different party. When Obama came, it was a different party.
Totally different.
Feel free to look that up. Like the Democratic Party changed the year in 2008 when Obama got elected.
8 and 9, it started to shift.
In 2009, it went to a different place.
Pro-war, for God's sake.
Pro-war, like Obama.
Like there's no tomorrow pro-war. Like more
Obama
bombs than George W. Bush.
They were the same president. They were literally.
They really were. They really were. And
They
now
really
that they're
were.
all buddy, people think people read this. Isn't it funny how the marketing works? Like, oh, it's so great that George W. Bush and Barack Obama are so united on these issues. Like, dude, they were never not united.
And
You
Liz
know,
Cheney
they
and
were
Dick
never not
Cheney are
united.
fucking
That's not
endorsing
news.
Kamala Harris. I'm like, have you guys not learned
Yeah.
anything from 24 years ago with the neoconservatives that destroyed our monetary system,
Right.
created a banking collapse, and fucking had endless wars? And then the
Yeah.
next guy took over and did the same shit.
Do you want to know? Do you want to? Yeah. What she should? I mean, I tell you what. If they had really had any sense of awareness when they got Dick Cheney's endorsement, they should have like said no, thank you.
That
Like
should have been the nail in the coffin, dude.
that's
Like,
like if Dick Cheney is endorsing you, I mean, who are you, Satan? I mean, it's like give me a break. Like that should have been like if they had any sense of like, well, you know what, while we respect this and that, I would have been like, no, that's the kind of endorsement nobody should want. But are in 2024 they'll take all of the suck ups they can get from the so-called political right, but it stands to reason, right? It shows that there really is not a whole lot of fundamental difference, that there really are just two sides of the same coin playing the American public into thinking that there's a difference, and there isn't. Ultimately it's the war machine party, it's the surveillance state party, it's the party that wants to, as Ludwig von Mises pointed out, like, crush individual liberty. Both major parties are trying to control each and every last individual, in the country, and that is exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to control each individual. They're both enemies of liberty equally when it comes right down to it.
yeah, and another thing I'd like to point out with the Democratic Party is, they kind of are spewing this rhetoric that they are the party for individual liberty. They're bringing it back. They're trying to bring it back, but they're
Freedom,
like,
they talk
yo,
about,
we
yeah.
want to. Her, she's like, I'm going to make an assault weapon ban. Okay,
Those two
so
don't go together.
you're literally saying you're for individual liberty, but then turning around and saying you're going to ban weapons, which is our liberty to own, to defend ourselves.
Right.
And then they'll be like, well, you don't need an AR-15 or whatever, an AK-47 to hunt deer. No, we don't need guns to hunt deer.
That is
we need
true,
those
though.
fucking guns to fucking hunt you.
Right.
If you fuck
Yeah.
around.
No, this is for you, right?
Like,
Well,
these guns
yeah.
are for you, tyrants. They're
That's
for
right.
you, Democrats. They're for you, Republicans, who
That's
think
right.
you're going to come invade our private property and steal from us.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Like, that's why we have guns.
That's
And
right.
we need to stop tiptoeing around the fact, like a lot of libertarians would be like, oh, well, we just lost our guns out in the water somewhere. Somebody broke into our house and robbed us, or we lost them in a boating accident. No, skip that rhetoric right now.
Yeah.
To tell people you are armed, you are peaceful, you're a peaceful person. You want to be left alone. You want to live your life. You want to raise your family. If you come and try to deviate from our plan, we will use our guns.
Right.
We need to, no, seriously though.
If you give us no choice,
end this
what else
rhetoric
we do?
of we lost our weapons. No, if you come and fuck with our rights, you're going to learn a lesson.
I thought about this when it comes to registering things, and I can't help but keep going in this direction a little bit too, to watch what's happening, in other countries. But as you probably know by now, because you hang out with me a lot online, as of October 1st, you now have to register your chickens in the UK, right? You have to register your chickens. You must register your chickens. Chickens, I mean, so you have to register your chickens with the government now. Of course, that's patently absurd, and of course, a lot of my friends.
I would love to hear what Donnie and Jeff has to say about.
Oh
that.
yeah. Oh no,
Like
I know, right? They'd say cluck around and find out, right?
Exactly.
But here's what some of our friends, our Liberty friends in the UK, are basically like. They're registering like hummingbirds to come visit their hummingbird feeder. They're registering every. It's what our buddy Stephen McNamara calls it's toxic compliance, right? where like you deliver, like you'll take their ridiculous law and you'll make it even more ridiculous. And that dovetails perfectly into his strategy of like how to deal with the anti-free speech laws, and that is, to bog down the British legal system by, taking every single minor infraction, because they dole out they dole out traffic tickets just like they do here in the US, right? Driving in the year, though, I mean, anyway, I'd probably have 5 or 6 of them before I got done driving through the United Kingdom. Steering wheels over here, what are we doing? So can you imagine these guys that get all these stupid little infractions, minor driving stuff? They have the right, just like we do in the US, same legal system we inherited, to address, to get their day in court and to address a judge. Well, if everybody started to do that, as opposed to just paying the fine, at risk of having a larger fine. So this is a little personal, but the idea is bog down the system to where it's untenable, right? To where it's a form of non-compliance. It's actually compliance, right? And I think it has tremendous potential to really mess things up. So Second Amendment, which the UK doesn't have. I think
totally lost you there for a second. Can you repeat that?
Oh yeah, yeah, sure. Okay. So, it says here my internet connection is unstable. How did that happen?
These damn computers. This is why when you
Right? Let me check my internet connection. Hold on. Okay, no, you said okay. All right, it says okay now.
Okay.
So, bottom line, when they ask us to register our firearms, okay, a little more valuable ultimately than chickens, but I think that's a similar plan. I think it's like I get the whole, okay, well, I lost them, so there's nothing to report. Okay, so if people are trying to, it's another way of saying like none of your damn business. However, you can say none of your damn business about how many firearms I have, because you're not constitutionally allowed to even ask how many firearms I have. However form that takes. In that sense, if you want to use a boating accident as your reason to not reveal it, fine, whatever it is. But it's when it's when they're trying to figure out who's got what and they want numbers. Then I can kind of understand why somebody wants to say that their firearms were lost in a boating accident or whatever, or not reveal what the content of what they have. Either way, it's none of their business how many chickens you have, how many guns you have. It's none of the government's business, and it never will be. And however you want to say no, say no. That makes
I'm
sense.
going to say no by registering my butthole. I'm going to register
Right.
my butthole
Yes.
with the state. I'll be like, hey, this is a weapon of mass destruction.
That is right. It is a firearm. Right? Is that, boys? I think if it ever comes to that, if they ever get any kind of legal firearm, they do have limited legal firearms ownership in the UK. That's another misconception. They do have it. It's not nearly as extensive as say with their neighbors in Switzerland, but I can easily see our friend Stephen McNamara doing the same thing, registering his butthole as a lethal weapon.
Dude, I got to interrupt you for a minute.
Yeah, he's a great liberator of Scotland. That guy.
He's going to be back on very soon. Actually, Stephen McNamara is the winner of this year's Buds and Reality Plays. Like his show that I did with him, a few months ago, that has more plays than I've had all year. Honestly, and I've had some big names.
Yeah. Well, it's well deserved, and he's inspiring, right? It's like libertarian Braveheart. It's inspiring what he's doing. He's also an amazing grassroots organizer, like amazing, right? I mean, in so many ways, he's better than I ever was because he's got a real big vision, but still rooted in the grassroots. But the other great thing about him is he's relentless. Like he's just no matter what he wakes up every day. How can I be more free? It's like, and that's right. It's like,
and he's running for office again. He just put his name in the hat again. I love it, man.
He's always running. He's always running, or as they say, standing for election in his town council. And so that's only a couple of weeks away. Like they do these by-elections, like drop of a hat, and like you got like a week to prepare, put your name out, and then you got a 3-week campaign, and it's decided. So yeah, I mean, I think what he's doing right now is gathering like-minded people, because there's still a lot of emphasis on the because he's running as an independent, and it's a multi-party system, so there's all sorts of people, who are representing who have party backing that he doesn't have. But he can still make a lot of friends and make a lot of noise and build a grassroots coalition. And I know that's his long-term goal is actually pretty impressive for the Scottish elections in 2025 in Scottish Parliament. He's got a real he's playing a long game, and so but even his little short-term, a by-election that's done in a couple of weeks from now. In fact, I think the by-election is like happening right after our election, but it's it's just a tool to which he can build more of a larger coalition, get more people informed, and build a network that way and on a grassroots level. So yeah, I think it's great to. I mean, obviously, let's help him any way we can, because that's going to be a model we can follow and duplicate. Like I said, anywhere in any common law country, certainly could duplicate that here.
Amen, amen. And I dig that. Like I love Stephen McNamara. I
It's
can't wait
cool.
to have him back on. He's a trip, dude. Like he's a trip to talk to, but he knows his shit, and
It really does.
it's absolutely amazing. Now before we close out this, or before we bring this all together,
Yes.
there's one more thing that the Democrats are screaming about, which for me as an econ guy, is a huge red flag.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris is promising first-time homebuyers $25,000 down payments. Sounds great on paper. It really does. Like if you're a first-time homebuyer, you're like, oh yeah, great. This is cool. These people are going to help me out. Number one, first and foremost, housing market's just going to go up another $20,000. Like the housing prices just go up $25,000.
Exactly.
Secondly, whose pocket is that coming out of?
Right.
Because as much as like I'm down to like help people or whatever, and
Sure.
I will voluntarily as much as I can. Like I do a lot of things through through voluntary donations and stuff like that, and voluntary charities. I do a lot of that on my own accord, and I don't need to post about it because I'm not one of those assholes to be like, look at me, look what I can do.
Right.
And I love people like those assholes.
Yeah.
Like, here's $500 to the homeless guy. Cool, dude. I'm glad you got your clicks and likes. You're an asshole.
Yeah, Jesus warned us not to do that, right? Yeah, Jesus actually said, every time you do something for the do something generous, don't make it don't make it a big production like the Pharisees do, right? Don't make it a big deal.
Yeah, you do it quietly, and that's what it is. But number one, the housing prices are just going to go up an extra 25 grand. Number two, who's paying for that? Like I said, I will voluntarily help people as I see fit or whatever. But like taxpayers shouldn't be responsible for putting down payments on houses for people like that. And that's up to the individual. Nobody helped me put a down payment on my house.
That's right.
Nobody helped you put a down payment on your house. Nobody was held at gunpoint to do so, because that's what taxation is.
It is.
Forced
redistribution of wealth. I'm going to add a third nuance to this, a third wrinkle to it as a Californian. $25,000 down payment. Really?
What are you going to do with that? You're going to put 25 grand down on something in LA? You're going to get a
25. Exactly. It's like, there's, I was going to say, you're going to buy a cardboard box in, along the LA basin, or the Santa Ana River. That's what you're going to get for a down payment of 25,000. And so but to underscore, what is a humorous thing, because the property values are stupid here. It's, a one-size-fits-all approach for the whole country when it comes to real estate, especially, is suicidally stupid. Because your neck of the woods, like if you just go down to Detroit, $25,000 down payment is a big deal. And I'm not saying that's to say that's just economies of scale.
Depending on where you go, though, you go to the Boston Edison district, they're going to they're going to laugh you off the fucking property.
Yeah, that's like anywhere down here.
$5,000 down on the house. They'll be like,
right.
Out of here.
But do you see how subjective that is? That's my point. It's like, like you mentioned Donnie and Jeff, and I'm like thinking, Louisiana, $25,000 generally will go a long way in most parts of Louisiana, but in California, no way. Like coastal California, forget it. I
want to put something into perspective for you guys real quick, because I have a client that I worked with a lot in the last year and a half. They came here from LA.
Yeah.
She bought her single wide trailer in Los Angeles in the trailer park for like $200,000 like 12 years ago. Mm-hmm. Do you know how much she sold that for?
Oh my God, I can't imagine.
It's just last year. They moved from LA to here.
Single wide trailer,
North Oakland County. And so in 12 years ago, it was $200,000 she paid for that. What did she sell that 650 square foot single wide trailer for in 2023?
I'll tell you, I got to ask you, is it leased land, or was it, because if it's on permanent land, you can get a pretty penny. So I'm going to say maybe it's
That I don't know. I can't give you
okay.
an answer for that, but
Because that's my world. But yeah, it was my world anyway until recently. But I'd say if it's lease land, maybe not quite this much. But if you own the land as well above it, doesn't matter if it's a mobile home or manufactured home. She probably probably doubled her money, I would imagine, in 12 years, or came close to it.
800, 800,
Wow. Okay. So more
800K.
than
So
so
she
she
bought her house.
quadrupled it.
She bought her house in northern Oakland County for cash in a Oxford, Michigan. Oxford, Michigan. Feel free to look it up.
Okay.
Feel free to look up Oxford, Michigan. She paid cash for the house.
Beautiful.
And then was able to afford a brand new kitchen, brand new flooring, and obviously brand new paint for me. My dad did the kitchen and the floors. But yeah, I did a bunch of painting there. And just between what he did and what I did was over 100,000.
Wow. Well, God bless her. That's that's using the
But
economy of scale.
I'm just saying that's the market in LA. So if you think
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
$25,000
25, that's nothing.
is going to get you anywhere in LA,
that's not even the closing cost.
they're going to laugh you. They're going to be like, well, here's your cardboard box on the Sunset Strip in front of the Go-Go, because that's what you're going to get.
That would be a cool place to live, though.
I mean, yeah, it'd be a great place to live, but it's a cardboard box.
Yeah, but not in a cardboard box.
And vomit everywhere.
That's right. No, so that's really one of the major problems of centralizing anything, is there is no such thing as a one size fits all. There's no way to plan an economy from the top down. It doesn't work. I mentioned Mises earlier. Like, come on, look up Austrian economics. Top down doesn't work when it comes to planning an economy. You can't even plan an economy. To say you can is folly, and that's a perfect example of it. Because 25,000 could be a lot in some parts of the United States, and absolutely nothing in other parts of the country. So to say that we have a one size fits all solution, I mean, it's indicative of the same insanity that created the Department of Education. That one size fits all top down management of something as inherently subjective as education can be managed from the top down. It's absurd. It's patently absurd. But yet this is your plan. We have a plan for you. Here's our plan. It's like, don't stop planning for us. You can't. You can't. Even the most well-intentioned person, and I think there are plenty of people that are well-intentioned, people that think that they need to organize from the top down because they want to make sure everybody's taken care of. Admirable goals, but poor execution, because it can't possibly work. It's just not indicative of reality. And yet they still use it as a marketing point, don't they? They still try to sell that to us. And it's completely unsustainable, unfeasible to even implement.
Well, this is the name of the game, though. And it's, you called it a plan. I call it ideas. These people come with ideas, right?
That's right.
But they don't have an actual plan.
No, that's true. Yeah.
And this goes for the Libertarian Party.
They'll call it a plan too. Yeah. Yeah.
This goes for the people in the Libertarian Party as well. Like, I point this out all the time. Like, libertarians have great ideas, especially, you read your books, you read your Rothbards and your Mises and your Hoppas and your Haslets, and you read all that stuff, right? And it's great. You read your Conkins.
Yes.
There's
the one.
But nobody cares about your ideas. No one cares. They want solutions.
Show me the plan.
This is where everyone lacks. This is where the Uniparty obviously lacks. And this is where the Libertarian Party definitely lacks, because they could take the ideas and be like, hey, not only do we have these ideas, we have solutions, but they can't do that. They don't know how. And this is the big problem. And this was, I got into a tweet thread earlier this week, and I had put something out there. It was a poll. You saw, I'm sure. It was, who's going to be best fit as president to deal with a financial collapse?
Oh, yeah.
Which is impending. Like, the financial collapse is coming. It's not just in our nation. This is going to be a global collapse. This isn't just us in America. This collapse is going to be a global phenomenon that nobody's ever seen. And, I put out the four main candidates. I put out, Trump, Harris, Chase Oliver, and Jill Stein, who happens to be the Green Party person.
Right. I mean, yeah. Jill's the perennial green now for, it seems like, a couple elections. Yeah.
Jill and Harris took 3% each.
Yeah.
Maybe one of them took 4%.
Right.
Trump took 50 some odd percent. Chase took 30 some odd percent.
That sounds about right, honestly.
The correct answer is none of them.
None of them, though. Right.
None of them have an idea how to deal with this, a big financial collapse.
Right.
The answer is the free market. The free
Yes.
market is the answer. The free market capitalism is the answer to 90% of the problems that are happening globally, not just in our nation. We're talking globally. And the people will be like, well, we have a free market in America. No, the hell we don't. We don't have a free
market. No, God, no.
We've never seen it. The closest we've ever got to free market America, our free market capitalism in our country, was probably in the very early days after 1776.
Sure.
But then central banks came through.
The Federal Reserve,
the fourth central bank.
Oh, yeah. The Articles of Confederation era of the United States, right?
Yes.
That was about the freest we could get, and even then it was kind of selective because it wasn't an even distribution of individual rights. That's another topic.
Right.
But the point being is, we haven't had a free. No one has experienced a free market, and no one has experienced actual free trade. There's always been interference from some higher authority. Some governing body has always picked and chose favorites in some way, shape, or form. So yeah, that's not freedom, right? That's not a free market.
And so to bring it all in now, we've totally, called out the Republicans. We've called out the Democrats. We've even called out the libertarians.
Yeah, it's true.
Which by the way, libertarian economics would probably suit best in a financial collapse. Let's be honest here.
No question. Yeah.
Because they would be willing to actually free the market and let the market run as they saw fit.
Right.
They would be, Chase Oliver would be the one to let that happen.
True.
Unfortunately, dude might get 1% of the vote at best. So let's be honest here. It's going to be between Trump and Harris. Who's going to be the best to deal with a situation that's going to happen like that? And it's going to. And as a matter of fact, if Trump wins the election, I think the collapse is going to happen hard.
You think they're going to tank it on purpose, right?
Yes. Yes, because that's going to be the ultimate power grab. Look what these Republicans did. Look what Trump did. We can't ever have this again. That's how they're going to do it.
Yeah.
Rinse and repeat. I'm telling you guys right now. And the same goes as for Harris. I just don't see it happening as bad to her as it will to him.
Yeah, well, what's going to happen is, I think it's kind of weird, difficult to speculate, but you're giving me vibes of like, Herbert Hoover leading into FDR, right? Like where it almost like they justified having a progressive economic interventionist take power because the laissez-faire capitalist Republicans had it for too long, and they let too much freedom happen, and now we need to have somebody in who's going to give us a new deal, right? I can almost see a repeat. It's talk about rinse and repeat. I see it happening too. I really do. I see Trump becoming a potential Hoover because God knows they played him like a flute, like when he was in office. I hate to say that. A lot of friends with Trump supporters. I'm not saying this to be mean, but let's be honest. He was taken for a ride, right. And I don't see anything that has significantly changed about his susceptibility to that. But the point being is, it's a perfect setup, as you're saying, for to just justify, if it's not Kamala Harris, I mean, in 4 years' time, a significant economic collapse that they could blame on Donald Trump would guarantee, somebody worse than FDR and Obama combined, like a straight up communist.
And then they would just own the government for the rest of the time because nobody could ever see anything like that ever again, even though it's both of their faults. And that's
right.
Part about it. Like,
that's right.
Did Trump spend more money than any other president in 4 years? Absolutely.
Yes.
Did he put us in debt more than any other president in 4 years? Absolutely. Yes, he did. Absolutely. 100%. We're not going to deny that. Then Joe Biden came in. Everything was on fire. He's like, here, have some gasoline, you guys.
Right. Let's pour some gasoline on it. This is working well. Let's make it worse.
So and this is where I'm going with this. Is like, we're screwed. No, we are. We're in bad
I
shape.
know.
I don't want to say we're screwed, but we are kind of screwed. It
Kind of.
doesn't matter who wins. I think one person's going to get it worse than the other. I think a financial collapse is happening regardless. How hard it goes will be depending on how much money they print. But this is why all these wars are circulating right now.
Yeah,
It
that's right.
all goes hand in hand. The money printer goes burr during wars, dude. It just does. So if we have World War III popping off, yeah, well, there's going to be a fake bust, but we will see a massive inflation happen again,
Yeah.
which will be whoever's fault is in office,
Yep.
because it's never anybody's fault except the person in charge. Forget about the guy who did all the things before. It's
Right.
this guy's fault.
Right. Right.
But
Right.
this is why we
Yeah.
need to come together now and be
Yeah.
like, okay, we see where we're headed. We see who owns the government, which is APAC, Israel. We see. Um,
Well, there's a collusion of interests, right? But obviously, APEC's a major factor. But the other thing that this underscore of, again, coming back to liberating your township, it comes back to local insulation. I'm going to go ahead and use that word, and ideally, as much as we can over the next 4 years, regardless of what happens, we need to start really working on making our townships and our individual homes even as sort of life and self-sustaining as possible. We need to work on that counter economy that Samuel Conkin III always talked about. I think we really need to. These are things that need to work from the bottom up. We need to start working on them from the us here at the local level, from the bottom up. We need to start sort of reconstituting the way things should be, because we're never going to get it from the top down. What we're going to get from the top down, as you alluded to, is probably an inevitable collapse. Right? We're going to see because it's unsustainable anyway. Let's say even if they left it alone, just on its own, it didn't try to manipulate any sort of crash of any kind, or didn't try to orchestrate events in any particular way, just left on its own, it's unsustainable as it is. So we already know that we have to start decoupling from the centralized banking, the centralized political power, and centralization in general. We just need to start decoupling ourselves from that. And that to me has always been the real path forward for liberty. And you talk about what the Libertarian Party solutions are there. Well, really at the national level, there really isn't any. We may get a couple at the state level, like Michael White, who I mentioned earlier, a few other like glimmers of hope, of sanity in an otherwise insanely dystopian world, even at most state level governments. I mean, I can't imagine a state that isn't just a small version of the corruption that's in DC. Certainly Lansing and Sacramento are not. They're just right.
no.
They're just DC light. And so I look at what's happening in our immediate future, the way you're describing it. I come back to, we have to empower our local areas as much as possible, but in doing so, we also have the potential with today's technology in particular, and if we're smart about it, especially, we can kind of link up and form a real alternative. Like, I wish Samuel Conkin could see like what we could potentially do today to make counter economics a real thing, like a real thing, where a network of liberated townships from across the world, all common law countries, working together with our own currency, with our own trade, with our own method of interaction and shipping goods and shipping. I mean, there's no reason why we can't create a parallel society. And this goes way back, and again, not to try to preach again, but I seem to always come back to this. But that's what the early church did in the face of the world's first great dystopia, ancient Rome. They created a parallel society that works better than the dominant pagan demonic dystopia of the day, right? Like, where we had Caesars trying to be worshipped like gods. Well, if that's not this election season, these they're trying to get us to worship these people. I swear to God, I really feel that way. Like, we talked about this. I don't know if we started recording yet or not, but we were talking about how the election cycle is really almost like deifying the candidate of one side, and like vilifying the other candidate. That's what it's all about. But either way, they're elevating these people to these quasi godlike statuses, and it reminds me of ancient Rome again, where Caesar began. I am a god among men. I'm not just, this ruler. I am a god. It's there's these false gods. And I of course, I even tweeted this from the Township Liberation page. We need to render unto Caesar the nullification that every false god deserves, right? Right. That's what we should render unto Caesar, a big fat nullification, because you ain't God. You are
Right.
nothing. You are just a mortal person just like me. You're not fit to rule over me. I mean, Donald Trump is not fit to rule over me. Kamala Harris is not fit to rule over me or anybody else. Like
No.
they're not fit to rule. And so here we are in this ritual of idol worship that's election season, and I'm just sitting back here going, none of like I am not buying into I have this mental nausea that just creeps in, and I literally have to go out of my way to avoid political advertising, any sort of deification of candidates, because I think it's tragically pagan in a way, right? And it does remind me of Rome, but also we have a blueprint, don't we? We have the example of the first, second, third, and even up into the fourth century, just about a church that formed a parallel society and eventually undermined and outlasted the world's first dystopia. We can do it again, and I say that, to skeptics who don't believe a word of the Bible the way I do. You're still on my team. For God crying out loud, I was raised by atheists. I have mad respect for Ayn Rand objectivists in particular, like my parents were. And I get it. You don't have to buy into the mystical stuff, but at least recognize the historical example and the principles of individual liberty that Christ taught when he inverted the world order and said, you as an individual matter to God, right? That was kind of unheard of for his day, and it certainly ran contrary to his enemies, the Pharisees, who wanted to exert authority as being somehow closer to and a better authority on God than the average believer of the day. So we have a good example to follow, and it's already been laid out for us, and we just simply have to follow in those footsteps and exercise our rights as citizens of common law and citizens of the kingdom of God, to say no to these false gods and to just peacefully say, we are not doing what you want. We are doing something different, and you will not really be able to stop us, because we have divine principles on our side, and for those of us of faith like you and me, we have God himself on our side, and if God is for us, who can be against us? Amen.
Amen to that. But we live in a nation where God's put on the back burner. Let's just be honest here.
Yes.
This country has totally left Christianity. They have bastardized God and Christianity, to be quite honest with you. And Christians don't do themselves a lot of favors. Let's be honest.
No, they
Christians
don't.
themselves are, let's be honest. Christians are very judgmental, even though the Bible says, hey, yes, do not judge anybody, leave judgment up to me. That's what Christ says or whatever. Christians are extremely judgmental. I've been on the opposite side of Christian judgment before, because I don't have the best past in the entire world.
Right.
I spent, my entire 20s, either in jail or on probation because I was a retard. You know what I'm
okay.
No, straight up, dude. I was an idiot, dude. I was drinking and fighting and doing whatever I wanted, and nobody could tell me otherwise. That's what my 20s were. I grew up a lot, surprisingly enough. I'm one of the very few who made it out of that life. But Christians, I'll never forget the one time the last time I got out of jail, actually. This was, in 2009. And I went to the church with my dad. I wanted to go to church. I wanted, hey, I need to get right. I messed up. I need to get right. And I went to the church. It was a great service. I actually cried during the service.
Yeah.
And then my dad and I went out to lunch with the pastor afterwards. And the pastor made me really uncomfortable, dude.
Really? No, it wasn't a Catholic. It was a.
No, this was the Southern Baptist folks, dude.
Oh, shoot. Okay. All right.
Yeah. And he made me feel extremely uncomfortable. Like, oh, are you done now? Did you learn anything? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm not trying to hear that, man. I'm just trying to be I'm just trying to find my way back. I don't want to hear, done yet? Did you learn anything? What the fuck do you think? I've been locked up for the past 6 months, dude. Yeah, I learned something, dude. I don't want to talk about it either. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. So I understand the outsider's outlook of Christianity, because that turned me off for a long time. And then I went partied for a while. I did.
Right.
That's just what it was. I went partied for some more. And then, it took me almost dying at the end of 2022 to kind of bring me back and be like, hey, somebody's calling you and somebody wants to talk to you. Somebody wants to, bring you back to the kingdom
Amen.
and stuff like that. And that's how it kind of happened. I've been, I'm not the perfect Christian, for crying out loud. You guys
Yeah.
know person.
Me neither. Trust me.
I'm
Yeah.
always cursing and swearing. I'm angry, but I really like when I do this, I come from a place of love, like in genuine honesty. That's why I do this. Like, I hate hearing myself talk. I don't want to this is why I need guests on my show. I'm not doing this by myself. I promise you that. Like, the last thing I want to do is listen to myself talk. But like, Christians themselves need to be more loving instead of judging.
Right.
And that's where, a lot of people have gone, outside of Christianity. But I also say this, y'all want a godless society? You got one.
Right.
Congratulations. You reap what you sow. Are you
Well,
happy?
that's just it. I mean, there's been a lot of throwing like baby out with bathwater when it comes to that sort of thing. It's like, okay, just because, organized Christianity and the visible church, right, or C.S. Lewis called it Christendom, right? Just because it sucks doesn't mean that the message isn't good, and that what's being revealed in that Bible isn't true, and that there is a loving God, a triune, Trinitarian God, who has a very specific agenda, purpose, and those principles are vital to civilization. So to throw all of that aside, just because, organized Christianity sucks, and it does, is talk about what needs to be decentralized. Christian faith needs to be decentralized radically,
Absolutely.
right? But that just because it sucks doesn't mean that the message itself sucks, or that there is no truth to it. And yet that's where we are now as a society. We've thrown baby out with bathwater, uh, and now we have, as you said, a level of decay that is unparalleled. I'm not just talking about morals, but the idea that you don't have any value, right? That kind of nihilism. That's the really dangerous part. I mean, say what you want about the moral implications, but what's really dangerous is believing that you don't have any value, which makes you susceptible to all sorts of manipulation. It makes you essentially susceptible to believing that you're killing the planet and dooming the future by eating meat, or whatever, right? By that, or by not eating bugs or whatever. I mean, it makes you susceptible to all sorts of nonsense, because you're in your mind, you're thinking, well, I don't really have any value, and I'm not really that significant. I'm not important. When, of course, the actual teachings of Christ tell you the exact opposite. So that's the frustrating thing about where things are today when it comes to that sort of thing. I don't agree with imposing my Christian morality through legislation or through government. I mean, heck, again, it's rendering unto Caesar that which is not Caesar's. It's not Caesar's job to be God, and in fact, it's dangerous to give that God, or to give that job to Caesar.
Right.
But yet, the religious right is notorious for that, right? So, for that matter, so is the left
Christianity
now.
and the state do not mix. They should not be
Not at all.
anywhere
Nor
near each
should they.
other.
Why
They
would
should not
Christ
be
accept it?
anywhere near that.
Why would Jesus Christ want a demotion? He already said no when Satan offered that to him. I'll give you all the kingdoms of the world. Like, that's a demotion, dude. Right?
Right.
I created all of this. I was there, like Aslan, right? Like, I was there when it was written. I was there. I created all this. Like, this is already my creation. You're offering something to me that I already have. And so why would that's a perfect example for why we need to not render unto Caesar that which is not Caesar's, and there are certain things that belong only to God. Only God can judge, right? Now we can certainly expect Caesar to protect, to enforce negative rights, like to keep people from being harmed. That's the only legitimate job of anything you would call a government, right? Would be to protect people from being harmed, having any force initiated against them, any fraud initiated against them, any coercion initiated against them. That's Libertarian Platform 101. But the reality is we've delegated way more to Caesar, way more.
Oh yeah.
Both, right. The religious right has delegated morality. The left has delegated collective. It basically made collective responsibility a thing and justified redistribution of wealth because of this imaginary collective responsibility. And again, those are all jobs that don't belong to Caesar, but we ran into Caesar those jobs.
That's right. That's right. Now let's close this out right now, or this is going to turn into the longest podcast.
Okay, good.
No, and I could talk to you forever. I love you, man.
Likewise.
I love having these conversations with you. But to close this out, get this book, Revival of Common Sense. You can get it on Amazon. It goes by Thomas Decentralize.
Yes.
Who is your buddy, but you have anything to do with this book.
Yeah, not well. Yeah, it's an alter ego of sorts, but it's also a pseudonym that I share with another writer who has similar insights and whatnot, and understanding of history and Christian principles as it relates to where we need to go going forward. So yeah, it's a collaborative effort actually. So I'm one of the two authors. I'll go ahead and come out and say that.
I love that. No, you've been very honest about that the whole time.
Yeah, but the other guy, who is involved, he has lots of justifiable reasons because he does a lot of work in theology.
I got his autograph too. Just
so. Yeah, he's in there too. But the idea is I should be more of the spearhead for that because I have the political background and I have the the sort of the passion and the drive to implement. And I do think it's a manual, right, of sorts. Like you talk about what solutions do libertarians have? Well, this is the closest thing I could think of to actually implementing liberty, because I don't think it's going to happen from the top down. I think that with a few exceptions like Arkansas and Michael White, I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of top down implementation of liberty. I think it's got to be from the bottom up, and that's what this is all about.
Amen to that. And just to finally just say goodbye to you guys. Well, not goodbye until next time.
Until next time.
But no, like localization, nullification, decentralization. This is how you do it. This is how you win, you guys. It's actually the only way we're going to win.
Yeah.
We're not voting our way out of this. Knock yourselves out. No, I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. I don't care. Right. I don't care who anybody votes for anymore. Knock yourself out. Go vote for Trump. Go vote for Harris, Oliver, Jill Stein, whoever else is on the ballot. Do your thing. I hope you know that, your vote is doing nothing.
Locally is the only place where you might have a measurable difference, right?
Yes.
Yeah, the local vote does, but yeah, on the national level, you basically the federal level, no. State, if you happen to live in Arkansas, and maybe the few other exceptions, but for the most part, local is where our future is.
And we can do it. This is something we can do, though, you guys. Like, this isn't just something like, hey, we're just going to, get local and nullify ourselves. No, this is something we can do and how we can win. And the bigger it gets and the larger it gets and the more it spreads out, these people in DC had no chance. So let's go local. Start from your basic township. Like it's township liberation. Start from your township. Start from your local city or charter or, county, whatever it may be. Start there. And then let it grow. Let's show people this is how you do it. Hypothetically, I'm in Detroit, Michigan, and we get, in Detroit, the right mayors and city councils and city clerks and school boards and sheriffs. You can sometimes you can elect police chiefs. That's not just a hired on position.
Yeah, sheriffs. We have sheriffs out here. Yeah.
And sheriffs are always elected, but like police chiefs are sometimes elected as well. Like, you can start getting like-minded people into your local chairs and just start saying, hey, I don't care who gets elected, in 2024. We're going to do things our way. There's nothing they can do about it. So let's not play games and dilly-dally around this shit. Let's just do it. Let's just do it and go. There's no all gas, no brakes, dude. Just go.
Right. And the beauty of it is also the implications are international, as I've said a couple of times, because there are townships in the UK that can nullify Westminster just as easily as townships in the United States can nullify DC or the state governments. I think it's a little different in Canada, but I mean, you could conceivably, I can see rural Alberta nullifying Ottawa. Like, you don't need Ottawa to tell you what to do. our new friend, maybe we can get him on the show at some point. Mark from New Zealand. I mean, there's a short runway between local and national government in New Zealand with a population of only 5 million people. There's no intermediate. They have no states, right? It's just towns and the federal government. And so, yeah, that's a two-way street. Like when Jacinda Ardern talks about, we'll be the sole arbiter of truth. The federal government then just completely crushes all local government under the authority of somebody like that. But the inverse can also happen. And that's why I'm kind of looking to New Zealand now to say, okay, what are these guys? What's Marco really going to do here? Because he's got some really cool, compelling ideas along the lines of township liberation, where the township, once you liberated a couple townships, you've already by default liberated a part of the national government in New Zealand. So there's huge implications for liberty worldwide if local or acting locally, even thinking globally, right? And interconnecting, taking notes from each other, and taking it to the next level, but from the bottom up.
That's right, man. I love that so much. Dude, Mike Decentralized, thank you so much for your time and coming on here. Thank you so much for sponsoring the show. You guys at Town Liberation on X, at number 2 Free Mike on X. You got to follow this guy. He's got a plan. He's got a vision. I'm glad he's invited me to come along with him. Thank you so much, dude. And then until next time, peace, love, and liberty.
Until next time, pleasure, everybody.
Later days.